The vibrant glow of Sirius Station's botanical garden cast dappled shadows across Kira Bennett's face as she carefully adjusted the atmospheric controls. Exotic flora from 17 different worlds thrived in the carefully maintained biosphere, a testament to her skill as the station's lead xenobotanist. Her dark hair was twisted into a practical knot, and the sleeves of her green research uniform were rolled up as she worked, revealing forearms lightly freckled from actual sunlight, a rarity for those born on Earth's underground habitats. Perfect balance, she murmured, reading the environmental metrics with satisfaction. The Telnari orchids, notoriously difficult to cultivate off-world, had finally produced buds. After 3 years of failed attempts, this breakthrough could establish reliable food production for the Telnari refugees who had been forced to abandon their homeworld. A soft alert chimed through her earpiece. "Botanist Bennett," came the station director's voice, "the Velsurian delegation has requested a tour of the gardens. Priority diplomatic engagement. They'll arrive in 30 minutes. Kira sighed, glancing down at her soil-stained hands. "Copy that. I'll be ready." Diplomacy always came first on Sirius, the human-built station that had become the nexus for interspecies relations in this sector. Positioned at the border of 3 major stellar territories, the station served as neutral ground, and its gardens were its crown jewel, showcasing humanity's commitment to preserving biodiversity throughout known space. She had just finished changing into a fresh uniform when the garden doors whispered open. The Velsurian delegation entered, their tall, elegant forms moving with that characteristic fluid grace that made them appear almost to be gliding. Their skin shimmered with subtle iridescence in the garden's light, colors shifting between deep azure and violet, with delicate patterns that humans had learned were as unique as fingerprints. For security officers, 2 human, 2 Velsurian, positioned themselves discreetly by the entrance. Standard procedure for diplomatic meetings, though tensions between humans and Velsurians had eased considerably in the 5 years since first contact. The lead Velsurian stepped forward, inclining his head in the formal greeting of his people. His skin displayed a particularly intricate pattern that seemed to ripple with each movement, and the silver markings along his temples indicated high status. "Botanist Bennett," he said, his voice carrying that musical quality unique to his species. "I am Thalen, diplomatic envoy of the Velsurian Collective. Your reputation extends even to our worlds." Kira blinked in surprise. "My reputation?" A smile curved his lips, so similar to human expressions, yet subtly different. "The botanist who successfully cultivated Zendrian fire blooms in artificial gravity. The scientist who preserved the last seedlings of Proxima Centauri's red jungle. Yes, your work is known to us." Something in his gaze made Kira acutely aware of the smudge of soil she'd missed on her wrist. Thank you. Though I'm surprised my work would be of interest to Velsurian diplomats." Thalen gestured to his companions. "May I introduce botanical specialist Neria and cultural attaché Varen? They have specific interests in your hybrid cultivation techniques." The formal introductions completed, Kira led them through the garden's diverse biomes. The Velsurians moved with purpose, asking surprisingly technical questions about her work. Their knowledge impressed her. They weren't merely diplomatic tourists but scientists with genuine interest. As they reached the arid zone, Thalen lingered near a specimen of crystalline succulents from Proxima b. These were thought extinct after the solar flares, he commented, fingers hovering near but not touching the delicate structure. "They were," Kira confirmed, stepping beside him. "I was part of the emergency expedition. We had 48 hours before radiation levels became lethal." She remembered those desperate hours, the race against time as the planet's magnetic field collapsed. "These specimens represent the only remaining genetic line." Thalen's expression shifted, the patterns on his skin darkening slightly. "You risked your life for plants." "For an entire ecosystem," she corrected. "Each species lost is an irreplaceable piece of the universe's puzzle." His gaze held hers, searching. "An unusual perspective among humans. Many of your kind value progress over preservation." "Not all of us," Kira replied. Something changed in that moment, a shift in energy between them, subtle but unmistakable. His silver eyes lingered on hers a moment longer than diplomatic protocol would suggest. The tour continued, but Kira found herself increasingly aware of Thalen's presence. The way he moved through the space, the thoughtful questions he asked, the respectful distance he maintained from the more sensitive specimens without being told, it all spoke of someone more complex than the typical diplomat. As they reached the experimental cultivation chamber, Neria and Varen became engrossed in discussion with Kira's assistant about cross-pollination techniques. Thalen stepped aside, gesturing for Kira to join him near a viewing panel overlooking the station's exterior. "Your work here is remarkable," he said quietly. "Particularly given the political complexities." Kira raised an eyebrow. "Political complexities?" "The Telnari orchids." He nodded toward the special cultivation chamber. "I recognize the species. The fact that a human station is helping preserve flora from a world whose government refuses all official human contact, it speaks to your personal convictions." She tensed slightly. The Telnari project wasn't classified, but it wasn't widely publicized either, given the diplomatic sensitivities. Plants don't recognize political boundaries. Nor should they. A smile touched his lips. "Your dedication to life, regardless of origin, is refreshing." Before she could respond, an alarm blared through the station, lights flashing to emergency status. Kira's comm unit chirped urgently. "Atmospheric breach in Section 7, came the automated alert. All personnel initiate emergency protocols." Kira's heart raced. Section 7 housed the most sensitive specimens, including the Telnari orchids. "I need to get to the containment chambers," she said, already moving toward the emergency access corridor. "Those are evacuation alarms," Thalen pointed out, keeping pace with her. "I know what they are." She didn't slow down. "But if those specimens die, an entire species could be lost forever." Instead of calling for security to stop her, Thalen surprised her. "What can I do to help?" She paused, studying him for a brief moment. Something in his expression, genuine concern rather than diplomatic calculation, made her decision. "I need a second pair of hands. The emergency protocols require biometric authorization, but you can help transfer the specimens once I've secured access." Without hesitation, he followed her into the restricted corridor. Behind them, security personnel were already escorting Neria and Varen toward the designated evacuation routes. Kira knew she was violating protocol by bringing Thalen into a restricted area during an emergency, but the alternatives were unacceptable. They raced through the access tunnel, emergency lights painting everything in stark red and shadow. When they reached the sealed doors of Section 7, Kira pressed her palm to the scanner, speaking rapidly. "Bennett, Kira. Emergency override Theta 9." The doors slid open, revealing a scene of controlled chaos. Automated systems were already at work, transparent containment shields dropping around the most vulnerable specimens. Through the observation window, Kira could see the cause of the breach. A small meteorite had penetrated the outer hull, leaving a hole no bigger than a fist. Emergency force fields contained the atmospheric loss, but the environmental controls were struggling to compensate. "The Telnari specimens," Kira said, pointing to a special cultivation chamber at the far end. "We need to get them to the secure vault." They worked quickly, moving in sync as though they'd practiced the emergency procedure together. Thalen followed her instructions precisely, his movements efficient and careful. Within minutes, they had secured the most critical specimens in portable containment units. As they finished, station security finally caught up to them, weapons drawn as they burst through the doors. "Step away from the civilian, Ambassador Thalen," ordered the lead officer. Kira moved instinctively between Thalen and the security team. "Stand down. The ambassador has been assisting with emergency preservation protocols." The standoff lasted only seconds before the officer's comm unit crackled. After a brief exchange, he lowered his weapon. "Director's orders. You're both to report to briefing room 3 immediately following containment procedures." As the security team escorted them through the now stabilizing station, Kira found herself walking alongside Thalen, both of them still carrying the precious specimen containers. "Ambassador," she questioned quietly. "I thought you were an envoy." A look of mild embarrassment crossed his features. Full diplomatic titles seemed unnecessary for a garden tour. "You're the Velsurian ambassador to the United Earth Alliance," she realized, remembering the news briefings she'd only half paid attention to. One of the highest-ranking Velsurians in human space, and she drafted him into emergency botanical rescue. "And you," he replied with unexpected warmth, "are exactly who I hoped you would be." As they entered the briefing room, carrying their precious cargo of rescued plants, Kira couldn't shake the feeling that this unusual first meeting was somehow the beginning of something neither of them had anticipated. 3 days after the breach incident, Kira found herself in unfamiliar territory, the diplomatic wing of Sirius Station. The corridor's polished surfaces and subtle lighting were a stark contrast to her soil-rich laboratory environment. She smoothed down her formal uniform, uncomfortable in the stiff fabric after years of practical workwear. The summons from Ambassador Thalen had been unexpected. After the emergency, they'd been separated for debriefing, she to face a stern lecture about protocol violations, he to attend high-level meetings about the incident. The official story declared the breach an unfortunate accident, though rumors of sabotage had spread through the station like wildfire. A Velsurian attendant greeted her at the entrance to the ambassador's private offices. "Botanist Bennett, the ambassador is expecting you." The attendant's skin shimmered with subtle green undertones as she gestured toward an inner door. "He requested privacy for this meeting." Kira nodded, trying to project a confidence she didn't feel. What could the Velsurian ambassador possibly want with her? The door slid open to reveal not the formal meeting room she'd expected, but a surprisingly comfortable space. Living plants adorned every surface, some she recognized from the station's garden, others completely foreign to her experienced eye. The air felt different too, more humid, with a subtle fragrance that reminded her of rain on warm soil. Thalen stood by a viewport, his tall form silhouetted against the starfield beyond. He turned as she entered, and Kira was struck again by the fluid grace of his movement. He'd exchanged his formal diplomatic attire for simpler clothing that reminded her of traditional Earth garments, a tunic-like garment over fitted trousers, all in deep blues that complemented the natural hues of his skin. "Botanist Bennett," he greeted her with a slight bow. "Thank you for coming." "Given that you're the ambassador, I'm not sure I had much choice," she replied with a hint of humor. His expression warmed. "I hope you don't feel coerced. This meeting is unofficial." Kira glanced around at the plants. "These aren't from our gardens." "No." He gestured toward several specimens. "These are from my homeworld, Velsura. Personal items I'm permitted to maintain during my posting." He approached a particularly striking plant with spiral leaves that seemed to pulse with subtle bioluminescence. "This one is called Nashira in my language. It has no direct translation in English." Kira moved closer, professional curiosity overriding her diplomatic uncertainty. "It's photosynthetic, but also bioluminescent." She studied the unusual growth pattern. "How does it manage the energy balance?" Thalen smiled. "You see why I requested this meeting. Few humans would immediately ask about its metabolic processes rather than simply commenting on its beauty." "It is beautiful," she acknowledged. "But beauty is often the result of fascinating adaptations." His expression grew more serious. "Our incident report mentioned your emergency override of security protocols to save the endangered specimens." Kira tensed. "If this is about regulation violations." "Quite the opposite." Thalen gestured for her to sit in one of the curved chairs that faced the viewport. "Your actions aligned perfectly with Velsurian values. Life preservation supersedes procedural concerns." He seated himself across from her. "Which brings me to the purpose of this meeting." He reached into a small container and withdrew what appeared to be a data crystal, but unlike any human technology she'd seen. It pulsed with an inner light that matched the rhythms of the Nashira plant. 3 standard months ago, a private Velsurian research vessel discovered an unmapped planet in the Saran Drift, he explained. Initial surveys revealed unprecedented botanical diversity, including species with remarkable adaptive capabilities. Kira leaned forward, professional interest peaked. The Saran Drift is in disputed territory. Precisely why this information hasn't been officially shared. His fingers closed around the crystal. The planet's location makes it politically complex. Multiple governments would claim jurisdiction, and we've seen how such planets become pawns in territorial negotiations. While their ecosystems are destroyed in the process, Kira finished, understanding immediately. Thalen nodded. The Velsurian Collective wishes to establish a preservation initiative, but we lack specialists with experience in rapid cataloging and preservation of multiple unknown species simultaneously. Like the work I did on Proxima b, Kira realized. Exactly. He placed the crystal on the table between them. This contains the preliminary survey data. I am authorized to offer you a position on a joint mission, unofficial and classified, to establish a preservation protocol before the planet's existence becomes widely known. Kira stared at the crystal, mind racing through implications. A secret mission to an unmapped planet in disputed space. That's not exactly in my job description. It would require a leave of absence from your station duties. 6 months, perhaps longer. His expression remained neutral, diplomatic. I understand it's a significant request. Why me? Surely the Velsurian Collective has its own botanical experts. We do, he acknowledged. But none with your specific experience in emergency preservation techniques. And he hesitated, the patterns on his skin shifting subtly. There is another factor. The survey team discovered evidence suggesting the planet may have been visited by humans long before official first contact between our peoples. Kira's eyes widened. That's impossible. Human expansion never reached the Saran Drift before the alliance formed. Nevertheless, certain artifacts were found bearing distinctly human design elements, yet carbon dated to over 300 years ago. His gaze held hers. This mission requires someone who can approach such discoveries with discretion and scientific objectivity, rather than political agenda. The implications were enormous. If humans had reached the Saran Drift centuries before official records indicated, it could rewrite the history of both species' expansion into space. No wonder the Velsurians wanted to keep this quiet until they understood more. I need time to consider this, she said finally. Of course. He stood, moving to a small alcove and returning with 2 glasses containing a clear liquid. Purified water, he explained, offering her one. Though I've been told human diplomatic protocol would suggest something stronger for such conversations. Kira accepted the glass, a smile tugging at her lips despite the gravity of the discussion. Water is perfect. Botanists understand its value better than most. They sipped in companionable silence for a moment, the stars beyond the viewport casting shifting patterns across the room. There is one other matter, Thalen said eventually, his tone shifting subtly. A more personal one. Kira raised an eyebrow, waiting. Velsurian culture places great importance on what you might call resonance between individuals. He set his glass down carefully. During our work in the emergency, I experienced a particular type of resonance with you that is quite rare between different species. Resonance? Kira repeated, uncertain. A harmony of purpose and rhythm. His expression grew thoughtful. The way we moved without speaking, anticipated each other's needs, worked as a single unit rather than 2 separate beings. In Velsurian culture, such natural synchronicity is considered significant. Kira remembered the fluid ease of their cooperation during the crisis, how they'd worked together as though they'd been partners for years rather than strangers who'd just met. I noticed that too, she admitted. I attributed it to good training on both sides. Perhaps. He smiled slightly. Or perhaps something more fundamental. He leaned forward, the patterns on his skin shifting to colors she hadn't seen before, subtle gold undertones emerging through the blue. In the oldest Velsurian traditions, when two beings demonstrate perfect resonance during crisis, they are considered to have shalivri, soul echoes. Soul echoes, Kira repeated, the unfamiliar concept simultaneously strange and compelling. That sounds spiritual. The ancient Velsurians believed that certain souls vibrate at complementary frequencies across lifetimes. His voice had taken on a quality she hadn't heard before, less diplomatic, more personal. When such souls encounter each other, they naturally fall into harmony. And you think we have this resonance? The idea should have seemed absurd, mystical nonsense from an alien culture. Yet something about it resonated with her, as though acknowledging a truth she'd already sensed. I believe the possibility exists, he replied carefully. Among my people, acknowledging potential shalivri creates a certain expectation of exploration. Of learning whether the initial resonance deepens or fades with further interaction. Kira understood suddenly. Is that another reason for inviting me on this mission? To explore this resonance. His skin patterns shifted again, and she realized she was learning to read his emotions through these subtle changes. This pattern suggested vulnerability, perhaps even embarrassment. It would be dishonest to deny that personal interest informed my recommendation, he acknowledged. But your professional qualifications are the primary reason for the offer. The mission itself is genuine and vital. She studied him, this alien diplomat who had just shared something deeply cultural, perhaps even intimate, with her. There was something refreshingly direct about his approach, despite the diplomatic layers. In human culture, she said after a moment, we might call this having chemistry. Though we don't typically discuss it so openly with someone we've just met. A flicker of concern crossed his features. Have I violated a cultural taboo? No, she assured him with a small smile. Just surprised me with your directness. The communication panel on the wall chimed softly. Ambassador, your next appointment has arrived, came the attendant's voice. Thalen nodded in acknowledgement before returning his attention to Kira. I must attend to other matters now. But I would welcome your answer regarding the mission within the next 3 days. The research vessel departs on the 7th. As Kira stood to leave, he reached out, hesitating just short of touching her hand, a culturally respectful distance, she realized. Whatever your decision about the mission, I would value the opportunity to continue our conversations. Perhaps you might show me more of your work in the gardens. I'd like that, she found herself saying, surprised by her own certainty. As she walked back through the diplomatic wing toward her familiar laboratories, Kira felt as though something fundamental had shifted. The data crystal felt heavy in her pocket, a tangible symbol of choices that now lay before her. A professional opportunity unlike any other. And perhaps something more personal, more profound than she'd expected to find on a space station at the edge of human territory. Soul echoes. The concept followed her, whispering possibilities she hadn't considered before. She'd always found her deepest connections with plants rather than people, their quiet strength and resilience speaking to something fundamental in her nature. The idea that she might share some essential resonance with this alien diplomat was simultaneously unsettling and strangely compelling. By the time she reached her quarters, her decision was already made. Some opportunities were too important to decline, both professionally and personally. The uncharted planet and its botanical treasures called to her scientific curiosity. And Thalen, with his direct approach and philosophical depth, had awakened something else entirely, a desire to understand resonance between beings as profound as that between botanist and plant. Tomorrow, she would begin preparations for a journey into the unknown. The research vessel Solstice hung in orbit above the unnamed planet, its sleek design blending Velsurian aesthetic sensibilities with human engineering practicality. From the observation deck, the world below appeared as a vibrant tapestry of blues, greens, and purples, colors that hinted at familiar biological processes yet arranged in patterns unlike any charted world. Kira pressed her hand against the viewport, wonder overtaking scientific objectivity for a moment. 2 weeks into their expedition, and the planet still took her breath away each time she saw it from orbit. Beautiful, isn't it? Thalen's voice came from behind her, the now familiar musical cadence warming something within her. The survey team designated it Harmony in their logs. Unofficial, of course. Apt, Kira replied, turning to face him. She'd grown accustomed to the shimmering patterns that moved across his skin, learning to read the subtle shifts that indicated his moods. Today, his usual blue-violet tones carried traces of gold, a pattern she'd come to associate with contentment. The analysis of yesterday's samples is complete, he said, offering her a data pad. The molecular structures of the ridge flora show remarkable adaptive properties. Even more significant than we initially theorized. Kira scanned the results, excitement building. These regenerative capabilities could revolutionize agricultural approaches on depleted worlds. She looked up at him. We need to establish a permanent research outpost. 6 months won't be nearly enough time to document even a fraction of the species. A shadow passed across Thalen's features, the gold in his patterns receding. The collective council is divided on the matter. As is your alliance. The official delegations arrived. Kira hadn't expected representatives from either government so soon. This morning. They're reviewing our preliminary findings now. He hesitated, then added more quietly, including the artifacts. The artifacts, evidence of human presence centuries before official records indicated. Over the past weeks, they've discovered more, remnants of a small settlement, technology bearing unmistakably human design signatures but incorporating elements that didn't match any known human development timeline. They're going to classify everything, aren't they? Kira said, the reality of politics intruding on their scientific discovery. Most likely. Thalen moved to stand beside her at the viewport, close enough that she could feel the natural warmth that radiated from his skin, another physiological difference between their species that she found strangely comforting. But we still have 3 days before they expect formal presentations. 3 days to document as much as possible. Something in his tone made her study him more carefully. You're worried about more than just classification protocols. He met her gaze directly, the diplomatic facade dropping away. There are factions within both our governments who would prefer to weaponize this discovery rather than preserve it. The adaptive properties of these plants, if militarized, he stopped abruptly. Kira understood immediately. Biological warfare. They'd use ecological preservation as cover for weapons development. The thought sickened her. We can't let that happen. No, he agreed, his voice hardening with conviction. We cannot. The weeks on the expedition had transformed their relationship. Working side by side in the field, they'd confirmed Thalen's initial sense of resonance between them. They moved in unconscious synchronization, anticipated each other's needs, communicated with glances and gestures when words would take too long. The Velsurian concept of Shalivrai had ceased to feel foreign to Kira, it simply named what she experienced in his presence. Their connection had deepened beyond professional collaboration but remained undefined, hovering in that delicate space between friendship and something more profound. Cultural differences and political realities created boundaries that neither had yet attempted to cross, though Kira increasingly found herself wondering what might lie beyond them. We have options, Thalen said after a moment, turning from the viewport. Come with me. He led her through the vessel's curved corridors to his private quarters. Unlike the Spartan functionality of the human-designed sections, his space reflected Velsurian sensibilities, living plants integrated into the architecture, subtle lighting that mimicked the distinctive spectrum of his homeworld sun. Once the door sealed behind them, he activated a privacy field, standard protocol for diplomatic discussions, but the gesture carried added weight today. What I'm about to show you isn't in the official record, he said, retrieving an object from a concealed compartment in the wall. He placed it on the table between them, a sphere approximately the size of her palm, crafted from a material she couldn't identify. Its surface shifted between opacity and transparency in slow, pulsing waves. The survey team found this at the deepest level of the settlement ruins, he explained. Its composition doesn't match any known material from either human or Velsurian technology databases. Kira resisted the urge to touch it. A third species? That was my initial theory. He gestured for her to sit as he took a position across from her. But the internal architecture appears to be a hybrid, human design principles but incorporating materials and energy conduction patterns similar to ancient Velsurian artifacts. The implication struck her immediately. You think humans and Velsurians had contact centuries ago? That they collaborated? The evidence suggests it. More than simple contact, true cooperation. His expression grew intense. History as we've been taught it is incomplete, Kira. Perhaps deliberately obscured. She stared at the sphere, mind racing. But why? Why hide first contact? I have theories, but no certainties. He leaned forward. What matters is what this means now. If our peoples collaborated once before, achieved technological synergy that neither has replicated since, then the narrative of fundamental incompatibility between our species is false, Kira finished. The political establishment on both sides maintained that while humans and Velsurians could coexist peacefully, true integration was impossible due to insurmountable biological and cultural differences. Thalen nodded, the patterns across his skin intensifying. The delegations arriving from the Alliance and the Collective include hardliners who have built careers on that narrative. When they see this evidence, they'll bury it, Kira realized. Or worse, use it to accelerate military applications while keeping the historical implications classified. Precisely. The weight of the situation settled between them. This wasn't just about botanical preservation anymore, it was about historical truth with profound implications for current interspecies relations. What can we do? Kira asked. Thalen touched a control on his wrist device, and a holographic display appeared above the table, navigation charts of the surrounding sector. There's a research outpost in the Mirian system, operated independently by the scientific consortium. Outside direct alliance or collective control. Kira studied the route he'd highlighted. That's 3 weeks at standard velocity. The delegations will notice if we disappear with the artifact. Not if we create a suitable distraction. A hint of something almost mischievous appeared in his expression. And not if we don't use standard velocity. He manipulated the display, revealing a modified shuttle craft in the Solstice's auxiliary bay. This vessel has been equipped with experimental drive technology, a prototype based on theories developed by my research division. It can reach the Mirian outpost in 4 days. Kira stared at him. You came prepared for this possibility. I came prepared for the truth, whatever it might be. His gaze held hers with newfound intensity. But I won't ask you to risk your career, possibly your freedom, without full disclosure of what we'd be facing. He reached across the table, his long fingers stopping just short of touching hers, maintaining that culturally respectful distance he'd always kept between them. The resonance between us, the Shalivrai, it's not just an ancient superstition or cultural curiosity. Among my people, it's recognized as a neurological phenomenon. When it occurs between Velsurians, it creates a potential for something we call Enshala, mind-threading. Like telepathy? Kira asked, scientific skepticism asserting itself despite everything she'd seen. Not precisely. More like, heightened empathic awareness. An ability to sense each other's emotional states, even across distances. His skin patterns shifted to a configuration she hadn't seen before, deep violet with silver undertones. It's exceedingly rare between Velsurians and unheard of between species. Until now. Understanding dawned. You think we could develop this connection? This mind-threading? I believe it's already beginning, he said quietly. Have you noticed moments when you knew what I was feeling without looking at my skin patterns? When you found yourself responding to thoughts I hadn't voiced? Kira had attributed those moments to growing familiarity, to learning his habits and expressions. But there had been instances that defied easy explanation, times when she'd known he was approaching before hearing his footsteps, occasions when she'd prepared equipment he needed before he'd asked for it. "If you're right," she said carefully, "what does it mean for us?" "It means we have capabilities that others don't. Advantages, if we choose to use them." He gestured toward the artifact. "It means we might be uniquely positioned to understand what happened here centuries ago, and to ensure that knowledge reaches those who will use it responsibly rather than those who would suppress it." She studied him, this being from another world who had somehow become the person she trusted most in the universe. In just a few weeks, he'd transformed from diplomatic stranger to essential partner. Whatever this connection between them was, she couldn't deny its existence. "How do we develop it further?" she asked, decision made. "This mind-threading?" Relief and something deeper flickered across his features. "There are techniques, meditation practices from my culture. But they require—" He hesitated, "physical proximity. Contact that would breach the formal boundaries we've maintained." Kira understood the cultural significance of what he was suggesting. Velsurians maintain strict protocols around physical contact, particularly with other species. For him to propose this represented a profound shift in their relationship. "How much time do we have before the delegations expect us?" she asked. 3 hours, he replied. "They're still reviewing the preliminary data in the conference chamber. 3 hours to make a decision that would alter the course of both their lives. 3 hours before they would either submit to authority or become fugitives in pursuit of truth." Kira looked from the artifact to Thalen and back again. Throughout her career, she'd dedicated herself to preservation, to saving what might otherwise be lost. Species, ecosystems, knowledge. Some things were worth any risk. She extended her hand across the table, palm up. "An invitation." "Show me," she said simply. Thalen's expression transformed, wonder and gratitude flowing across his features. Slowly, giving her every opportunity to withdraw, he placed his palm against hers. The contact was electric, not merely in the metaphorical sense but as a tangible current that flowed between them. His skin was warmer than human temperature, the texture smoother with subtle ridges along the fingertips. But what overwhelmed Kira's senses was the sudden expansion of awareness, as though a door had opened in her mind. No distinct thoughts crossed between them, but emotions flowed freely, his relief and hope washing over her, her determination and trust reaching him in return. The connection was tentative, fragile, but undeniably real. "This is just the beginning," Thalen said softly, his voice seeming to come from both outside and within her mind simultaneously. "With practice, the connection will strengthen. Enough to help us understand the artifact?" Kira asked, finding it difficult to form words when so much could be communicated through the link between them. "I believe so. And enough to coordinate our actions when we make our move." He didn't need to elaborate, she sensed his plan taking shape, not as explicit thoughts but as impressions, the shuttle, the artifact, the journey to safety. As they sat with palms pressed together, the boundaries between them growing more permeable by the moment, Kira realized they were creating something unprecedented, a bridge between human and Velsurian consciousness that reflected the historical collaboration their discovery suggested had once existed. History wasn't just repeating itself. It was evolving. 3 hours later, as alarms blared throughout the solstice and confused security personnel responded to multiple simultaneous system failures across the vessel, a small shuttle detached from the auxiliary bay. By the time the administrative delegations realized what had happened, Kira and Thalen were already beyond conventional tracking range, the mysterious artifact secured in a special containment unit between them. They had chosen their path, not just to protect scientific discovery or historical truth, but to explore the most significant discovery of all, the unprecedented connection forming between them, echoing across the stars like a promise of what might yet be possible between their worlds.